We will call the April meeting of the Wood County Board of Supervisors to order. I would ask that all supervisors please sign in, and they did at this point in time. We'll do things a little bit differently this morning. We have 4-H here this morning, so Trent Miner is going to lead us in the invocation, but we're going to remain seated for the invocation, and then we will introduce the 4-H group, and they will be doing the presentation of the colors of the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Supervisor Miner?
Good morning, folks. As I sat down to come up with the invocation for today, I wanted to emphasize the starting of this new term, and of course it's tax day today, so prayers are always needed then. And as often as is not always the case, there are authors out there that have done this much better than I could ever hope to. The thought that the most appropriate prayer was commonly known as the Serenity Prayer, which goes something like this: God, grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. What I had not realized is that this is an abbreviated form of a prayer that an American theologian, Reinhold Niebuhr, had written, and that ended up in a manual for the Army chaplains back in 1944 during World War II. It has since been adopted by the Alcoholics Anonymous and other STEP programs. I thought it was fitting for today, and it goes: God, give me the grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, courage to change the things which should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I will be maybe reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen. Thank you.
This is 4-H's 100th anniversary in Wisconsin. So 2014 marks the 100th anniversary of a unique partnership between the counties of the state, the University of Wisconsin Extension, and Wisconsin 4-H Youth Development. The 4-H youth today will present the flags and the Pledge of Allegiance. The youth will then stay up here for a couple of minutes and share with you why 4-H is important to them. So the 4-H group will present the colors, and I'd ask the body to please rise while they do.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now we're going to teach them the 4-H pledge. Okay, so come on up. Ready?
I pledge my head to clear thinking, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands to larger service, my health to better living, for my club, my community, my country, and my world.
Okay, put your hands back. So I want you to introduce yourself and then talk to us a little bit. Okay?
I'm Elliot Huber. 4-H means getting to know people and doing things better. I have participated in the Wisconsin State Fair. I am in shooting sports. I have accomplished a 4th place in my first tournament, and I just want to say 4-H is a really great place.
I'm Abby Hubel, and I have just started 4-H a few years ago, and I went to Global Bud Camp and Global Buds and the State Fair.
My name is Ben Huber, and 4-H is, well, 4-H is actually where I got started in shooting sports, which is, well, there's a few practices around through 4 months, I think. And you go and you sign up for something. So I signed up for everything. I signed up for air rifle, archery, and air pistol. And then after the practices are done, we have a fun shoot where you get to shoot balloons. Well, actually before that, we have a tournament, and the tournament is where I did this. I shot this arrow into the center of the target, and then I shot another one into the back of it.
What is that called, Ben?
A Robin Hood. This is called a Robin Hood.
Oh my goodness.
My name is Brianna Walker. I'm with Webster 4-H, which is in Marshfield. I haven't actually been in 4-H that long. I've only been in it maybe 3 or 4 years. But in that short amount of time, I've been able to do a lot of things, like counsel younger kids at camp, or help the county advisors with teaching. And I think it's great because for me, when I walked in, I was pretty shy and quiet, but now I'm more able to come up here and do something like this and talk in front of a group. So that's part of my favorite part of 4-H.
My name's John Hartman. I'm a member of the Richfield 4-H. I am also a member of our PALS youth organization. We're a higher up committee. We take care of youth involvement. We are a subcommittee and we get youth more involved. We have different tournaments throughout the summer. And I think 4-H is really great. I get to see all the younger members come out and have a great time and just enjoy themselves and get to belong someplace so they know they're at home somewhere along the line.
Thank you guys for coming this morning. And I'm Kylie Brown, and I'm the 4-H program assistant for Wood County. And part of the reason why these young people are here today is to help to celebrate 100 years of Wisconsin 4-H. And so Wisconsin 4-H has been around since when? 100 years ago. 1914, yep. So we wanted to take this opportunity real quickly to thank you for your support of not only Wisconsin 4-H, but Wood County 4-H. We've got a really great thing going here, and we really appreciate all of the extra support you guys give us. So again, thank you so much for your time this morning. And I just wanted, Ben had brought a couple of his little projects, and Elliot brought a couple of their little projects up there too. I don't know, we won't have time to come up and look at them or anything, but I just wanted to make sure that you all were able to see those. And thank you. Laura Huber is the kids' mom up here, and she was able to come and spend the morning with us too. And so I just wanted to publicly say thank you to our parents and our 4-H volunteers for all the work that they do and the time that they put into our program. So thank you again for all your support. And if you want a cupcake, they're outside. We'll leave them out there for you. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. At this point of the program, we have the swearing in of our new county, all of our county board supervisors, and I will turn this over to our clerk.
Okay, if everyone would please rise, raise your right hand. Do you, having been duly elected to the office of supervisor in and for the various districts in Wood County, Wisconsin, solemnly swear that you will uphold the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will perform the duties of supervisor to the best of your ability, so help you God? I do. Congratulations. On your desk is your oath of office. Please sign it. Leave it on your desk. Also, it is your certificate of election. Welcome.
Now that you have all been sworn in and the work begins, I just want to tell the public that everybody who has served on this board or will serve on this board in the future really is dedicated and responsive and will be diligent to your needs. We all understand that the work that we do is very important. The hard part is not to make it self-important. I'll share this story. I often come home and I'll tell my wife, today we formed the ADRC, we did a 6601 agreement, we met with the government, we maintained local control, we solved a $2.5 million budget crisis, And she goes, did you get the milk and bread? And usually I say, no, I forgot the really important thing. So, go back and get that. So, amongst all the other important things we do, life goes on, and I just want to encourage those people to realize that, we need to be responsive, we need to be diligent, and be dedicated. So, at this point of the agenda, we have the election of officers, the chairman of the board, the vice chairman of the board. The first order of business is to elect a chairperson, and at this point in time, we will open nominations for that position. Supervisor Elwood.
I would nominate Lance Clement for County Board Chair.
Are there other nominations for the office of County Board Chairperson? Any other nominations for the office? Any other nominations for the office of County Board Chairperson? Supervisor Supervisor Hendler, I'm sorry.
I make a motion to close nomination, cast a unanimous ballot for Lance Clement.
A motion on the floor, second by Supervisor Hocamp. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Now we have the election of the vice chairman or chairperson. Rephrase that of the county board. Entertain nominations. Supervisor Pollock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to nominate Trent Miner for this position.
Are there any other nominations for the office of vice chairperson? Supervisor Wagner.
Move nominations be closed and unanimous ballot be cast, Mr. Martin.
Okay, without objection, we have a motion by Supervisor Wagner to close nominations and cast unanimous ballot. Is there a second to that motion? By Supervisor Ashbeck. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that carries. Thank you very much. And like I said, for the whole board, we really appreciate that. We take this very seriously, all of us. And the one thing I can promise is that we will do the best job we can for the citizens of Wood County. That gets us into our regular order of business today. I guess the first thing we have is the minutes from the previous meeting, and we would entertain a motion to accept the place on file by Supervisor Fire, a second by Supervisor Nelson. Any discussion on those minutes? Any discussion? All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that carries unanimously. Excusals today, we have none. Resignations, we have none. We have several appointments, and without objection, I'm going to do all of these at once. If you'd like one poll, we can certainly do that. But we have Donna Roser to the CCCW Board for a 2-year term, Tom Butke as the citizen member to the Health and Human Service Committee, Land Information Council, the Seed Committee Chair, Justin Connor, our Land Information Officer, Susan Ginter, our Register of Deeds, James Erickson, a real property lister, Karen Kubishek, our Treasurer, Gerald Miner, the Pittsville Fire Department Chief, Kevin Boyer, the Wood County Surveyor, Alan Bry, the Wood County Board, Town of Marshfield Chair, and Rich Cronquist, a Realtor with the First Weber Group in Marshfield. And I would entertain a motion for those appointments. Who was first up there? Supervisor Fire, maybe. I'm not positive. Who do I want to do this with? Try to do these in order. And a second by Supervisor Henkel. All right. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Those appointments carry. Comments from the public regarding any agenda items. Comments from the public regarding any of the items that are likely to come for us today or may in the very near future. No public comment today? Okay, that gets us to acknowledgements and recognitions. And I'm going to come down and go down the front for that. With every election, typically we have some supervisors who either step down from office or for whatever reason leave us and have provided meritorious service for, and sometimes a long period of times and sometimes for a single term. And if I could, I would ask at this point in time Supervisor Ruth Moody to please come forward for a presentation of her plaque. I am guessing that I have known Supervisor Moody for probably about 30 years through her work with the Boy Scouts and my involvement there. But Ruth, this plaque reads, "To Ruth H. Moody for 7 years of dedicated service to the people of Wood County as Wood County Board Supervisor," dated April of 2014. I want to thank you for those 7 years of dedicated service and all that you did. We're also going to give you this little pin. And in case you forget who you are, the name tag that you had. Would you like to say anything for a moment? Not really?
Not really. I know some of you feel bad that I wasn't reelected, but I'm real happy about that. I wasn't planning on running anyhow, so I'm a certain person that knows who he is. So anyhow, I'm real happy about it. I can go back to some of the things my daughter already turned back the chairman of the Nakusa Funds Committee to me because she says you have more time now than I do. So thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Thanks for your service. And we have one more of those. Supervisor, or past supervisor, William Murphy. Bill, if you come forward. Bill is one of those people who served a single term in our county, and again, very sorry to see him make the decision not to run. Bill hit the ground running. He provided valuable service, not only those committees, but to those special assignments that we asked him to do. Like all supervisors, we hope, come with an open mind, a willingness to learn, and a dedication. And I don't think anybody exemplified that more in a single term than Supervisor Murphy. So, Bill, on behalf of the county, we want to recognize your 2 years of dedicated service to the people of Wood County as a Wood County Board Supervisor dated April of 2014. So I'd like to present you with this plaque, and if you'd like to thank those, feel free.
Thank you very much, Lance.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
A little taller than me.
No comment.
No comment?
Thank you.
Bill didn't want to make comment today, but he made one yesterday as he had cake at as his retirement from the Public Safety Committee. And I'm not exactly quoting him, but to paraphrase, he was grateful for the time that he got to serve. He made a lot of friends, and I think he's going to cherish the time that he spent with this board. And having said that, with Ruth and Bill's retirement, Supervisor Lightnum and Supervisor Hamilton, you guys have some big shoes to fill, and we welcome you aboard. So I will now turn this over to Vice Chair Minor for presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ed Reed, would you come forward, please? As you're all aware, Ed has announced his retirement with Wood County. That is effective on May 6th. So this will be his last county board meeting with us. I know he has some guests here with us. Come on up, Ed. I won't bite today.
Oh.
He has some special guests with him, and he'll introduce them later, but I'm taking one away from you. If you look to the back of the room, there is an adorable little girl in the far right corner. There she is. Isn't she adorable? There's a smile, isn't she? And we know who she takes after already in front of the crowd, don't we? And that's great. Ed started with Wood County back in March of 1999 after being in the private sector, working for companies such as Kraft Foods, Rockwell International, and Allen Bradley. Ed also is a veteran of the U.S. Army. When he first started with Wood County, he was key in restructuring our health insurance plans to take us out of the red ink into a level of reserves that protects the county and the employees and their families. Ed helped us through the challenges and the changes of Act 10 and guided the departments and department heads through a process of restructuring our policies and procedures so that we could move forward in a more pro-employee set of policies and procedures in place. He implemented our employee feedback group to assist in this process and to give our management team guidance in our ongoing operations and activities. That group continues to meet today and will continue to meet after Ed is gone. To say that being an HR director can be a thankless job is a massive understatement. Tough decisions have to be made, there's no doubt. Policies need to be well thought out and researched. Ed has been there and guided the HR committee and the successor executive committee and the county with his vast knowledge and his expertise in human resources. But now it's time to do some fishing, some traveling with his wife, Cheryl, and have some grandpa time with little Laura back there. So in short, Ed, like you said in your resignation letter, it's been fun, 15 years of fun. And we thank you for your service to Wood County, and congratulations, my friend.
Thank you, Frank.
You bet, thanks.
Give me a podium and I will use it. Few comments. My good friend Peter Cassenhole saw me writing some notes. He said, "Oh God, Reed, keep it to short time. I've got court this afternoon." So I'll shorten it up. I want to first, though, be the first to officially congratulate you, Trent and Lance, on your elections to your former and new positions. Continue to do the fantastic job you have. I want to say thanks to a number of people today. I want to say thanks to you, County Board of Supervisors. We haven't always agreed. Sometimes we did, and sometimes that wasn't the fun stuff. Sometimes the fun stuff was the disagreeing. But in the disagreement, we made progress. And I'm really proud of the progress we have made in the human resources fields in Wood County. It's not all my credit at all. It goes to a number of people. It goes to the executive committee, who I didn't always agree with, but we had fun discussing. And it's been a real productive 15 years, I feel, for the county. As Trent mentioned, there's been a number of accomplishments. They've been accomplished by Wood County, not just by Ed Reed. And frankly, you folks have got a real interesting road ahead of you. I think there's going to be some issues facing the county. My favorite, my hot button now is employee engagement. I think that's going to be a real issue that you folks are going to have a wonderful time tackling and expanding on. You didn't need advice from me on where to go from here. There's a couple of things I really wanted to accomplish when I came up here, thanking you folks. But I also want to acknowledge in the back of the room my wife Cheryl, who has put up with me not always coming home in the best of moods, and has offered great counsel and advice, who has been the balance to my over-caffeinated personality when I was really wrapped up in an issue, and has helped keep me moving forward. I'd like to acknowledge our daughter Jeanette and our son Glenn, who is the reason WPS panics every time I call him. He's on a mountainside someplace out in California right now, and he couldn't quite get up the mountain to get here. And the light of our new light of our life, Laura back there, our granddaughter, those folks are the reason that we do what we do, and we need to do it well. There's a saying, and I'm going to paraphrase it so it doesn't sound like a sexist comment. Behind every good manager is a great team. And those are the folks that really deserve the recognition today. I'd like to ask that they stand. Paula Tracy, could you please stand? Paula's our administrator in human resources. Carol Tetzlaff, our benefits coordinator. And Angel Butler-Meadow, who is our HR everything. Three fantastic folks, three folks who have really been the behind-the-scenes reason that HR has accomplished a number of things very successfully. And so I personally, folks, thank the three of you. You folks have got a ways to go yet. In fact, you've got at least an hour. Well, the way Lance runs things, you've got about a half an hour to go yet. That's good. I want to wish you much success, and on the road in the future, many happy travels. Good luck.
Ed, we also wish you and your family the best, and I like fish, so feel free to bring some back into town. One other acknowledgement or recognition this month, and that is, this is Land Conservation's proclamation of Soil and Water Stewardship Week from April 27th to May 4th. And we want to make sure we acknowledge that. That takes care of the acknowledgements and recognitions today. We do have a couple of big things today. We have a special order of business from Venture Architects on the Space Needs Implementation Committee. I always forget the whole term there. And then maybe the most important thing, and probably the toughest thing ever accomplished, will be after our meeting today, we will have iPad training in this room as we try to move forward, catch up to all the kindergartners and first graders who already use these effortlessly. So we're going to try to catch up there. So without anything further ado, we'll go right into the packet. There were no referrals this month. Executive Committee meeting of Tuesday, April 1st on page 9. Page 10 is the same. 11. Page 12, the HR monthly letter of comments. Page 13, the maintenance monthly letter of comments. 14, comments from the finance department and Mike Martin. Page 15 is Amy Kalk and Systems, their update on what's going on there, as well as page 16. Safety and risk management, 17. Comments from the county clerk on 18. Do you have anything, Cindy, you need? No? Okay. All right, that brings us to the first resolution in your packet. It is on page 19. I'd ask the clerk, please read the resolution.
This will be numbered Resolution 14-4-1. This is a resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation notes to fund capital projects in 2014. Fiscal note proceeds from general obligation borrowing in the amount of $860,000.
You've heard the reading of the resolution. Motion by Fire to approve, a second by Bry. Discussion on this resolution. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Any discussion? All right, without discussion, I would ask you to please vote. I'm interested to see how this all works out.
We have done extensive testing and okay, what? Really?
Yeah. Mike is
Pushing yes, yes, yes. I'm sorry, I can't believe I said that.
Besides all that, this resolution.
You forgot. Were you just fooling around? Were you just fooling around to give me more gray hair, or was there really a problem?
He was just confirming without voting.
Yeah,
he was confirming.
This resolution passed
I have enough
unanimously.
gray hair, Mike.
I noticed our two new supervisors had no problem with this. Thank you very much. Pages 21 to 27 was the State of Wisconsin Board of Commissioners of Public Lands, the explanation of the application for the state trust fund loan, which is what we just voted on. Page 29 in your packet, another resolution from the Executive Committee.
This will be Resolution 14-4-2 to accept offer of sale of tax deeded property. Fiscal note, offered amount of $11,000 minus real estate taxes, publication fees, abstracting fees for a gain of $7,110.65.
Okay, again, you've heard the reading of that resolution. Motion by Hendler, second by Hamilton. Do we have any discussion on this resolution? Any discussion? Please vote. And that resolution passed 18-1.
It should be 19.
19-0? That vote?
Maybe I need to tell you to push yes first.
We're going to have button training after, right before the iPad training. All right, well, we make that note, Jared. That we'll take care of that. Thank you very much. We have a second resolution there, or a third resolution from the Executive Committee dealing with tax deeded property, and I'd ask the clerk to please read that resolution.
This will be Resolution 14-4-3, tax deed eligible property, to authorize the tax deeding of property in compliance with Section 75.14 Wisconsin statutes. Fiscal note, taxes 2008 through 2013 of $24,021.30, plus special charges, publication fees, and tax deeding expenses for a total of $26,589.61.
Again, you've heard the reading of the resolution. Do I have a motion to approve? By Nelson. Second by Mahan. Any discussion on this resolution? Supervisor Clendani.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to let the members know that that special charges on there is something that the legislative committee is working on. When this comes before us, we will not have to pay the municipality for those special charges, hopefully, if there is a bill passed, such as they could have a cleanup of gas and oil or something like that. Could go into a lot of money, and just before it's dropped for tax purposes, is what the municipalities do is they put that charge on there so they get it back. So that's something that we're working on in the legislative committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Clendani. Any other discussion on this resolution? Any discussion? Please vote. Resolution also passed 19-0. As you see, this is working much better, and I certainly want to thank Cindy Cypress, who took the lead on this, along with Eric Engel, our radio engineer, our systems department. They worked long and hard to try to make some adjustments here. It was some of the new equipment that we put into the building. We're working on rewiring, shielding that better, and it looks like it's working pretty good today. But they spent a lot of time and effort making sure that worked. I want to make sure I thank you. Thanks. Page 33 in your packet. Health and Human Services Committee, March 24th. Page 34, 35, and 36. The Health Department's monthly update from Sue Kupferman at 37, 38. Supervisor Winch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a question on page 37, item number 4. It says we're working with the Human Services with Brown at Norwood on rental items or terms. Isn't that already set countywide through the maintenance department?
30 seconds.
Supervisor Roser.
Because we've moved some departments now into the Norwood property, Norwood had to come up with a rental fee. So they're not really set by the maintenance department because they are facility specific. So there were no rental fees set up by Norwood because nobody had ever rented space in that square footage before. So that's what that is referring to, are the fees that they came up with for the departments that now will be renting space in that facility.
Supervisor Winch, I still see a look of concern.
I would assume that they've used the formula that we've always been using. I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $11 a square foot.
Supervisor Roser or?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure I can clarify this totally, but that rental fee, how could it be the same across the board when facilities have different charges that come with them? So I don't see where the formula would be applicable across the board, and it would have to be facility specific. So maybe somebody can clarify that a little bit better, but I didn't know there was a formula that we really used across the board.
I have Sue Kupferman. Sue, if you take the microphone.
Sure. I think this situation is a little bit unique because we're only going to be using that space about 1 day a week. So they weren't looking at the full rental charge because we won't be utilizing electricity in this space other than on average 1 day per week. So they worked up some calculations specific to that.
Supervisor, thank you. Supervisor Minor.
And to be honest, I think that's the direction we need to go with Norwood, is a maintenance fund like we have here at the courthouse building, like we have at the 12th Street building. I think that's a direction the Health and Human Services Committee needs to look at, or whether it becomes a part of, if the maintenance of that north end building becomes a part of the maintenance department function here. That's all to be decided, but I can definitely foresee us going in a direction like that, like what you mentioned, definitely.
I guess so to answer that question, we have nothing in place now, but we're moving that direction. All right. I think I'm on about 37, 38, and I think we got to 39. Any questions there? Or page 40? The Veteran Service Officers Report on 41 and 42. Wood County Human Services Department from Director Redder. I'm going to give you a moment to go through those. Those are 43 through 49, pages 43 through 49. Take a moment to see if you made any notes there. No questions there. Page 50, Edgewater Haven, report from Amy Slattery. Page 51, minutes of the Wood County Public Safety Committee of March 18th. Page 52, same committee, their minutes from March 20th, as well as 53. Page 55, minutes from Conservation, Education, and Economic Development of Wednesday, April 2nd, as well as 56, 57, and 58. North Central ITBEC, Tourism and Economic Development Advisory Committee of Thursday, January 30th, on 59, 60, 61. Their board minutes on 62, 63, 64. A resolution that was in your packet that was that came from Forest County in regard to build out of the casino in Kenosha. It's in there for informational purposes. Page 66, nothing more than the ballot from that resolution. Page 67 through 74, UW Extension and all of their reports. 67 through 74. Give you a moment to go through all of those. Provided by Peter Manley and all of the different people down there in UW Extension. Page 75 was the proclamation. And we did have the 4-H youth here today for the presentation. Page 76, just the invitation to the WACEC. Wait a second. How do you pronounce that acronym? Nobody knows? WASAC? WASAC. On 76. We have the staff report from Planning and Zoning on pages 77 through 86, 77 through 86. Supervisor Hinkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to point out page 81 and 82 about the community grant development block grant, and we do have some of those folders here if you need to take them to some of your municipalities. The amount of money that is available from those for working on residences in Wood County is quite large, but after a couple more months then it will become available to it will not be county specific and it will be available for the whole area. So we're encouraging people, if you know of any situations, to pick up the folder, get people to call the Planning and Zoning and get more information about these possible loans.
And so any other comments on the reports from Planning and Zoning? I think we're working pretty diligently for getting all those positions filled. Right? It's going to be a process, but we are working on that if anybody has any questions there. Page 87 in your packet. Again, monthly reports from Jerry Stork and the people that are generally be in the Land Conservation Office. That starts on 87. 88. Questions on any of that? And then that brings us to the resolution on page 89 brought forth by the Seed Committee.
This will be Resolution 14-4-4, authorize the Planning and Zoning Department to prepare and submit a grant application to the State of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources by May 1st, 2014, to fund completion of a bicycle and pedestrian connector trail between the City of Marshfield and the Village of Hewitt in 2015. Fiscal note, no county expenditure.
Again, I have a motion by Hinkle to approve, a second by Bry. Is there any discussion on this resolution? Any discussion on the resolution? All right, seeing none, please vote. And that resolution passed 19-0. Thank you. Second resolution from the Seed Committee on page 91. And again, I'd ask the clerk to please read that resolution.
This resolution will be numbered 14-4-5 to approve an addition to the Port Edwards Municipal Cemetery located in the town of Port Edwards. County board approval is required per section 157.07 Wisconsin State Statutes. No fiscal note.
You heard the reading of that resolution. Motion by Supervisor Alborn, second by Supervisor Hamilton. Any discussion on this resolution? Going twice, 3 times. Please vote. Again, that resolution passed 19-0. Page 93, minutes of the Judicial and Legislative Committee of March 18th. Page 94, same committee, March 19th. Any questions there? The Wood County Child Support Enforcement update from Brett Ruink on 95. Corporate Counsel Kassenholz update on 96, 97. Pages 98 through 101 are notice of injury and claim or updates on cases that we have pending. And that brings us to page 103 in your packet, which is a resolution from the Judicial and Legislative Committee.
This will be resolution 14-4-6 to encourage the state to update the statutes in that Wisconsin statute section 995.20 identifies January 15th as a legal holiday for Martin Luther King Jr. Day, when in fact that holiday is set by the federal government to be on the third Monday every January and is celebrated across the country on the third Monday in January. No fiscal note.
Motion by Hendler, a second by Clendenning. Any discussion on this resolution? Any discussion? Please vote. That resolution passed 18-1. Page 105, minutes of the Highway Infrastructure and Recreation Committee of April 3rd. That's 105, 106, 107, 8, and 9. Page 110, update from the Park Construction Supervisor. The Office Supervisor's Report on 111. The Administrator's Report on 112. Forestry Update 113. Current projects for the Highway Department on 114. Page 115 through 119. A bunch of background information for the Highway Department. Bids, prices, what we're doing there. Any questions on any of that? Page 121 in your packet, the amended minutes of the Aging Disability Resource Center on February 13th. That's 121, 122, 123. Their minutes from February 13th and 124. Any questions there? Page 125, minutes of the McMillan Memorial Library Board of Trustees for February 19th, as well as 126. South Central Library System, their Board of Trustees, and 127, and 128. That takes us to the end of the packet. We do have a special order of business, and I was kind of hoping we'd wrap that right about this time so we didn't have to stop and start again. Probably, I think what we're going to do is we'll go through that process, and then when we're done with that, we will adjourn this meeting, take a short break, and then go to the iPad training. Donna, do you want to come forth and do the introductions? And Eric, again, I want to thank you for this. The system didn't just work kind of okay today. The voting system worked outstandingly well today, so thank you very much. For those of you, I just take 1 second. Eric, will you stand up a second?
Yes.
This isn't just because of this, but Eric handles all of our squad car site, communications, the microwave ones, the towers, anything that has to do with communication. That is the guy back there. So if you see him wandering around, he handles all of that. Eric, thank you very much. Just so everyone knows who you are. Donna.
one of the issues is what to do about Eric's building in our space needs discussion. And so because of his importance, that is going to be something that's going to be part of this discussion. Last night we had a public hearing, asked the public to come and give us input on some of the conceptual designs that we have been looking at with our space needs. We've kind of been living with this for a number of months, and we're excited today to come before you because we really need your input. After this presentation today, and you have the presentation on your desk that John will be going through, we're looking to this county board to give the ad hoc space needs implementation committee your thoughts on the things that are going to be presented to you today. We also are not telling the public that last night was the only opportunity. We had 6 people that came. We were pleased with the comments that were given to the committee at that time. And I said at that meeting that we were looking for more public input into this, whether people call us on the phone or they send us a letter or an email. We really want people's input, the public, the taxpayers, the county board, because the Space Needs Implementation Committee will be meeting again in May, and then they will bring back to this body a recommendation of some direction that we need to take. We've already begun to address some space needs. We know about the movement of the veterans offices and the sheriff's department. The health department came up today. They will not be long-term renting any space at the City Hall in Marshfield, that we are remodeling, renovating space for their needs in some square footage that was not being utilized at the Norwood facility. Now we just have Human Services renting space in Marshfield, and hopefully part of the long-range plan will be moving them to the Norwood campus as well. So those recommendations need to come before this body, and we do have 2 centers of government in a way in Wood County with our population bases in Marshfield and then also in Wisconsin Rapids. So before the Space Needs Implementation Committee meets in May, we hope that we will hear responses from the people that sit and will be making decisions about which direction we go in with meeting some of the space needs that we have. So John Kane from Venture Architects is back again this month to present some information, and then we will go from there. And so listen attentively to what he says, make notes, and please let those of us on this committee know your impression of the presentation today. Thank you. John?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. You have in front of you a hard copy of the PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to go through here briefly. I do have 6 or 7 additional copies that I think if any of you are interested after the end of the meeting, the county board meeting, please feel free to come up and take one. Sometimes I can be long-winded. I'll try to be really short. It still will take about maybe 45 minutes to go through this discussion that we have in front of us. And then we'll open it up to questions and answers. So I think the best thing would be simply let me ramble through this and then save your questions till the end. The format for this, if you recall, looks very similar to what we presented a couple of months ago. And the way the information will be shared with you this morning is very similar as well. So there will be some slides in here that are repeats from the prior time, and those are ones that I will go through very quickly. We've labeled this interim presentation because I think there's still, as Don indicated, the need for dialogue and discussion before any final recommendations are made from the committee. So without further ado, I'm going to go to slide 2, where again, we just very briefly, as we did a couple months ago, talk about our overall project approach with the committee, looking at the big picture. We're at a 30,000 6-foot elevation looking down on the county. So we know that the devil is in the details, and we know there are detailed questions that you all will be asking, but we're trying to keep the conversation at the highest level possible at this point. This is a master plan, a 20-30-year plan. I go to the next slide, 3, and it outlines briefly the steps that we have been going through from visioning all the way down to options and recommendations. That's slide 3. I should be advancing these, I apologize. That's right there. If we then go to the next slide, which is our overall schedule, where we began work in November. Am I going too fast? Too slow? Yes, okay. Where we began in November, we're now here in mid-April, coming to the completion of the study. Oops. John, you know how to use this? Here we are. Right here, where the purple line is. That's where we are today. Our work is nearly complete. Go to slide 5, and we talk briefly about the drivers of the study. Efficiency, cost effectiveness, spending money when we have to, being smart, thinking about the future. That was slide 5. Slide 6 is an important one. When we were here 2 months ago, we talked about there being 8 priorities in no particular order. And out of the discussions with the committees, we've really been able to isolate that and define more clearly what those priorities are. And it has been an interesting discussion that it hasn't been space needs or the consolidation of government that has kind of bubbled up to the top as being the most important concern of the committee, but the safety and the security or the lack thereof that exists here in the courthouse. So that's going to be a theme for our discussions here this morning. You will see on this particular slide, we tried to define separately the needs of Marshfield and Wisconsin Rapids. So Marshfield, as Donna has been talking, the relocation of the departments formerly in City Hall to the Norwood site. For Wisconsin Rapids, and here we are in this city, we have 7 priorities, and I want to talk just briefly on those, because these are now in the order that the committee believes we should be discussing them. Item number 1 is to address the courthouse security needs. I mentioned that a moment ago. There are additional future justice needs that need to be considered. This is 2, courts, jail, and sheriff. The 3 are the remaining departments within this courthouse that are really, in some respects, the original driver of the need for the study. There are half a dozen departments that are struggling in the spaces they currently have, both with regards to size and location. There are parking needs that will exist in any of these recommendations that we discuss. Item 5 is the consolidation of human services into one location, and you know that's also been an ongoing discussion where presently you're in several locations around Rapid. 6 is related to the infrastructure needs. We're talking about a building here that's 60 years old, nearly 60 years old, and a lot of that infrastructure has really never been replaced. You know Terry very well, and he's done a marvelous job with what he has, but we're talking about the need for some additions and improvements here short term. And then finally, item number 7 is to make some decisions relative to the annex building property across the street. If we talk briefly about Marshfield, and you saw a slide similar to this several months ago, we were talking at the time about 3 options. Either move in as is, an addition and remodeling, addition to the existing campus, or building a brand new building. And through discussions, we've determined that it's really a hybrid of both moving in as is, as well as building a new building. So you'll see the diagram on the left. We've noted that Veteran Services, Health Department, and the Sheriff's Department are going to be moving in, if they haven't already, into existing available space. We're also talking about doing some acoustical and lighting changes to the gym to make that space more usable for these departments that are now being relocated to that. And we're going to be developing some budget numbers for that information. On the far right, what we've said is, within the committee, that the best value for your dollar relative to meeting the human service needs is to build a new building. And what we've budgeted here is a freestanding, slab-on-grade, single-story, roughly 11,000 square foot building, $2.6 million project cost if it were bid this coming year, as opposed to trying to remodel and add on, which would have then been the middle. Sir?
Yeah, with that plan there, being very familiar with that site, I would strongly recommend, if you build that building, is to make a 45-degree change on it so it's parallel to the existing building. The reason for that is the property between there and the dental clinic is too valuable to split it with a building going the way you have it directed.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment. And I think as the committee and the county considers this particular option, the exact placement of that building needs to be thought through very carefully. I'll be honest, in this diagram, and I appreciate when I draw things, they oftentimes taken literally. I don't think the thought was that this necessarily would be the exact location for the building, but I very much appreciate your comment in that regard, and we'll keep that in mind. Let's then now focus to slide 8, which begins the discussion about Wisconsin Rapids. You saw a few of these slides the last time, and what we're focusing on right now is the issue of courthouse security. And simply as a reminder of the condition that we face in this particular building with regards to security and perhaps lack thereof, we talk about building entrances, we talk about secure perimeters, we talk about movements of prisoners through the building, we talk about the lack of separation for judges, the public, inmates, those other people who come to the courthouse every single day and find themselves surrounded by, in certain cases, people coming to court. The first floor plan simply identifies that there are 2 entrances to the building. They could be locked off, certainly, but they do exist, and so that we have some penetrations on the first floor. If I go to the next slide, I think this is where a lot of the concern comes up, where not only do you have a variety of entrances, and we're talking about trying to manage and control security within the courthouse complex, the plan, half of the plan to the right, can you see the little red dot? That's going to be the jail. Inmates coming from the jail to court are going to come through this point of security, through the public hallway, to this elevator, the only elevator in the building, as you know. If we go then to the third floor rather, where the courts are, the floor we're on, as you know, inmates coming out of that elevator now come into the public hallway. So the paths are being crossed with whomever else is in the hallway at that time. Likewise, you have jurors going from the courtroom to the jury assembly room, out in the public arena. You just have a lot of crossing of paths of individuals and groups of individuals who really have no business being together in that corridor, the single corridor. How many courtrooms exist like this around the country? More than we'd like to think. This is how way courtrooms were designed and have been designed for decades, if not centuries. But we live in a different climate. We live in a different environment. New facilities that are being built, and even those that are being retrofitted, if it can happen, try to address the security aspects of a court's facility. Let me then take you briefly to slide 11, where I hope I don't confuse you in this diagram. This is an illustration of how a courtroom or a courthouse might be organized, a new facility. And it's labeled at the top a three-way movement separation. And what we're discussing is the separation of the inmates from everyone else, the separation of the jurors, the judges and their staff from the public, and then the screening of the public coming into the building. So these three participants do come together in a courtroom, such as the one that we're in. But in a more ideal environment, they're all coming from a different location. And so very briefly, in the diagram, the public, apologize. You've got the public coming from the lobby through a control point. And so in a courthouse, there would be a single point of entrance for everybody coming in. That takes them into a public hallway where they then have access into the courtrooms. In the middle, you have holding areas for the inmates as well as an elevator that bring the inmates typically from a floor below up into that little box right here. And then they come into the courtroom. To the back, you have space for the judges, their staff, and jury deliberation rooms. And they likewise have access to the courtrooms this way. So as you can see, there's this separation of these three paths of circulation. This is the kind of diagram we would be looking for in a new facility. We talk now about, we're going to move on to the, so that's the first issue or concern, that of security. The second item, meeting the needs of the judiciary, really falls into three areas: the courts, the jail, and the sheriff's department. Perhaps of greatest significance or importance or level, degree of importance has to do with the courts. We know that there is a time in the future where a fourth judgeship will be awarded to Wood County. We know at the same time there are a lot of other counties who are thinking that they may be first as well, and so it's really an issue of funding from the state of Wisconsin. But there are other departments here that are in need of space. We laughed about this yesterday. The clerk of court's department is too small, not the clerk of court. District attorney's department is too small. The register and probate space is too small as well. So these are departments, they're not people. I guess you have to laugh once in a while. The jail, you're in great shape here in Wood County at the cost of Waupaca County. Thank goodness for Waupaca. You've got a nice deal for a long time, I believe 10 years if I'm not mistaken. So do you need a new jail now? No, you do not. Not for at least the next 10 years, and who knows what might happen after that. But certainly there might be a time in the future where Wood County would consider bringing their prisoners back here to Wisconsin Rapids. So in our master planning, we're not saying you need to build a new jail, but we're saying we need to master plan for that new facility. So as you start to think about the placement of buildings, you need to want to give strong consideration to, well, have you given thought to where that jail might go? Currently, the jail is 127 beds. You could well be leasing up to 75 by 216, and right now, the sheriff has indicated that you're in the range of about 220 beds if you brought everybody home. Likewise, the sheriff's department is in need of space, like many of the other departments here on the campus. The recommendation then is in the master planning related to the courts and the court support, plan for the fourth judgeship, plan for future court expansion beyond that, long term, well before and after any of us are around, and then larger spaces for all of the support departments that relate to the courts. For the jail, thinking about planning a 300-bed jail, we need 220 today, and then master planning for either more in the future. Again, not building it, not creating shell space, but just having space on the site or either horizontally or vertically to make those plans in the future. So this is a long-term plan, and I think you understand and appreciate that statement. Likewise, there's need for the Sheriff's Department, and the dispatch center would also move to a justice center. So that really defines then the need, both with regards to security and the space needs for a justice center. I don't think when the study began that it was thought that the recommendations we'd be talking about today would be a justice center. I never thought that when we started this study, because the needs that were discussed had to do with human services, the consolidation of the various locations, meeting the space needs of the other departments in this building. But as we talk about how to solve those problems, and we looked at other options besides just the two we're going to talk about today, they all had really large price tags, ultimately, 20, 30-year price tags that were beginning to get close to the big numbers we're going to talk about this morning. But the thing that they weren't able to address was the issue of courthouse security. And so I think in many respects, for the elected body here in Wood County, I think that's the discussion that you want and need to have. At the biggest picture, at the 30,000-foot level, is how important is security to all of us who are here, to our constituents, to our judges, even the inmates who have to come here, who they're innocent until proven guilty. As I said, we live in a really scary world these days. So where have we gone now in our discussions? We've prioritized everything and really determined as a group that we need to think about security, and then allowing everything else to kind of fall into place, if you will. Having thus said that, we talk then about, well, how do we solve the issue of building a justice center, if that's the priority? And what we've talked about is the consideration for two locations. And let me try to outline what's being discussed. The program, the amount of square footage, etc., between these two different ideas is identical. Nothing changes between the two of them. In both of these, what we're going to talk about is moving the courts and all of their related departments, district attorney, clerk of court, etc., out of this building into a new building. We're going to move, and this can be phased, and I need to emphasize that. This is not all one shot. Ultimately, likewise, the jail, inmates would move out of the existing jail into a new facility as well. In these options that we're talking about, the 17th Avenue site becomes the location for a new justice center. Relative to the downtown, the new justice center, as we'll talk here in a minute, is going to go on the block to the south. In both options, having moved all of those departments into a new building, then this building is extensively remodeled to bring and consolidate human services into this building. There's space available to plan for perhaps a future relocation of health department into this building. We're able to take care of all the other departmental needs because we've got a building that is, partially empty. So we can then solve all of the other department needs, having removed the whole court-related component out of this building. So that's kind of the big picture as we look at these. Now, looking specifically at the 17th Avenue option, the diagram you have here is the west half of the site. It's this piece right here. The concept is a two-story building. The purple is the courts on the second floor, the sheriff on the first floor. The jail is to the south. I mean, there are obviously many different ways to configure the building. This is simply a placeholder. If I list on the right, the components of the plan include a new jail, sheriff's department, 300 beds in the pricing that we'll talk about. We talked before about master planning to 400. One of the advantages of this particular site is that we've got a lot of land, so there can be far more future expansion of jail beds if needed. Another 300 beds. So there's some advantages to this site relative to being horizontal. Expansion would likewise happen horizontally. So I mentioned the jail and the sheriff. I alluded to the courtrooms, the clerk of court, DA, register and probate, child support, victim witness, all would move to this building. Dispatch center would move here as well as emergency management. ample space on this site for parking. And we'll talk about parking as an issue as well when we talk and compare the two sites. This slide, which is your downtown campus, the brown color, of course, is the courthouse. Parking here to the south, to the north, and some to the west. We talk about remodeling this building for general government, human services, health department. A new addition for elevators and toilets. That's this little purple thing on the building. It would provide space for, instead of trying to come into the building here and provide new shafts for elevators, as well as toilets, we would propose that they be built brand new as an addition to the building. And then as needed, any additional surface parking. So that's going to be an option that involves 17th Avenue and this particular building, the courthouse. The next option, as I mentioned earlier, is to bring everything to this campus so that you'll see in this diagram the existing courthouse, again, is being remodeled, as I just mentioned. The block to the south, we're placing the plan, if you will, that you saw on 17th Avenue. We're placing it on that block. It's extremely tight, but it might fit. Expansion here would have to be vertical and not horizontal, of course. We obviously have to address some parking issues because we're losing, one of the largest parking spots, parking lots that we have downtown. So that becomes a major conversation point should this option be explored further. I labeled this at the top, option A, which is right here, and I'll just go through a couple other options that we looked at briefly. This is B, where the building is simply rotated 90 degrees, trying to see if it fits any better that way. Let me note, please, that both of these options try to preserve Avon Street, and more importantly, the utilities that are currently in that street. And it was at the time, we had our real concern that maybe the relocation of those utilities would be a significant dollar. It's still a large dollar, but as I'll mention here in a minute, there's about $500,000 that we think would be required to relocate those utilities. And I want to thank the city of Wisconsin Rapids for putting those numbers together for us. And so their engineering department has provided that information to us. So that takes us then to option C, or slide 19. So if I scroll back and forth between the slides, you can see what's happening between the various options. That was A, that was B, and then C vacates Avon Street, relocates the utilities, and frankly provides some nice other options that are not available in the first two. Most notably, we can now begin to create the idea of having a single entrance to the whole campus. And so there's the ability, long-term perhaps, to even consider security for the whole campus if it's needed. And if then, as we know, working with other counties, one of the big concerns about creating a secure entrance is the cost to staff, correctional officers or security staff at that doorway. In this particular concept, there's only one location, so there's some advantages there. We're also not building that other purple little box on the west front of this building. It's all consolidated to one location. Now I'm getting a little bit into the details and maybe more than I want to, but I think we like some of the things that this particular concept offers, but the most important thing is that it's bringing everybody back to this campus. In fact, it's keeping those who are here now, but it's also bringing human services and potentially the health department, and we'll talk more about them in a minute, back to this campus as well. And certainly, I stayed at the Hotel Mead last night, so I had a chance to kind of live, directly with the life of downtown Wisconsin Rapids. And I think anything that county government can do in support of the city and trying to keep this downtown vital, I think there's a marriage that can and needs to happen. I think if you talk about the idea of a major downtown campus here, I think then there can be opportunity and the need to begin to partner with the city on parking or whatever is required so that it's a win-win situation. I won't go through the notes on the right. You can read them. I think you have a sense as to what would be happening in this particular option. I'm on slide 20. Slide 21 and 22 will basically summarize what I've just described. So slide 20, the 17th Avenue option, and you see the two diagrams that we were just looking at, 17th Avenue and downtown. We put up a 30,000 foot high level estimate, project cost estimate at $58 million. And that's all inclusive. That includes in today's dollars. So if you phase it over time, it's going to be a different dollar value, but the first phase would be far less than the $58 million. But it's going to include all the construction, the new Justice Center, the remodeling of this building, the acquisition of properties that would be required for any future parking if necessary. There's no utility relocation, so we're not worried about that. We are not necessarily including all of the infrastructure costs that might be involved here in remodeling this building. We're still trying to balance what has to happen independent of any of these discussions going forward with those portions of the infrastructure recommendations that would be folded into any major remodeling. And I'll just simply use one example, and that's fire sprinklers in this building. We don't have to do that now, but there's a big cost associated with that. But if you were to do any major remodeling in this building, the code would pretty much require that you sprinkler the building. You can get around it, but it's almost not worth it. You don't want to have to do that until you need to. So this is the 17th Avenue option, $58 million. The next slide. And I think even though there is this $500,000 utility relocation, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth bullet down, and I note 500,000 utilities are relocated in option C. I think there's some other savings. I mentioned one of those is not having the two entrances, so we're not duplicating some of that construction. I think at this point, for where we're at, I think it's a wash in that regard. Because we know that projects and studies like these have long lives, in other words, it takes a long time and oftentimes many years to implement them. We try to emphasize that there's a time and place, and right now we're stating the dollar values are assuming, not expecting, but assuming that this would be bid in 2015. We think that inflation is somewhere in the 3 to maybe 4% annual, and that's something that I think is historically has generally been the case for a long time. What then happens to this building? And it's illustrated briefly in these three diagrams. The first floor is to the left, the second floor is in the middle, and the third floor is on the right. The colors are more important than the names. You can't read the names. And I don't think the names are as important as the overall concept. But the salmon color would be departments that would remain in place. They're sized adequately for now and the future, and they're in a decent location within the building. The turquoise colors are areas that would be extensively remodeled. And let me start on the third floor and I'll work my way down. In this particular concept, human services in its many locations would all come down here to this campus and would take up all of the third floor, the floor that we are on. So this becomes the human services floor. The second floor, there are three areas, and I'll try to point them out. This was human services. This is planning and zoning. Yes, I think I heard a question. This area here is the courthouse on the 3 floors. This is the jail right here. And it's a one-story building. It's a slab on grade. There's no basement, and then there's no second floor to that building. So as I was indicating, in this plan, these brown-colored areas, many of them general government, here and here, simply remain at where they are. Most of the third floor, if not all of it, is relocated because it's the courts, it's the clerk of courts, etc. They've moved to the new building. So as I was saying, Human Services is here. Planning and zoning is here. This is all Sheriff's Department right now, Sheriff and Jail. The Sheriff has moved out. So this is planning and zoning. This is systems. You'll remember systems right now is down here on the first floor. A lack of space and some real concerns for the equipment safety because of broken pipes, etc. So we get them out of the first floor up to the second floor. So they're right there. Health Department, we'll talk more about them as we have in the past. They have a very favorable lease right now. We'll talk more specifically about that in a minute. We're simply saying that in a large master plan effort, you want to know where they could go when and if you needed to move them. And if you were to move them back to this campus, where then might that be? In the meantime, the jail, former jail, is unoccupied. But in this diagram, they would go right here. For both of this and Human Services, there could be, in addition to the main entrance to the building here, the ability to have an entrance on the east side of the building too. So you've got the ability for people coming to those departments with great regularity, being able to find a separate entrance to come into the building. The other colors on the diagrams, the blue represents spaces that are unoccupied, space that could be saved for future use. We're meeting the 20-year space needs for all of these departments and have space left over. So that's a portion of the jail, it's a portion of the courthouse. The red boxes, there are two of them, and as you're following the other conversations, they're red in your book, I guess they're purple on the screen. This is the entrance that we noted in options A and B, 3 levels. This is that combined option for option C, where general government's in the courthouse, the new courthouse and justice center would be to the south. So in 2 options, it's this box. In 1 option, it's going to be that box on 3 floors. Again, big diagrams, big ideas, lots of questions, no doubt. How do we get snow out of the courtyard? How do we accomplish this? How do we accomplish that? I mean, those are all excellent questions. We write them all down, we give some thought to that, we allow it to influence the big picture. So those are going to be the 2, that's really the discussion. It's, do you build a justice center? Does that become #1 priority, just to address the security needs? And then how best to do that? Do you split the campus on 2 locations, or do you talk and think about bringing everything down to the Wisconsin Rapids site? Both very viable. One less expensive than the other. One solves a lot, doesn't have parking problems. The other one does. But when you think about, at least in my mind, when you think about the benefits of consolidating everybody to one location, the movement of general government staff to the courts happens on a daily basis. In the downtown concept, that's just walking through from one building to another. You don't have to get in the car. We know we do a lot electronically, but there are a lot of operational economies in bringing everybody together on one campus. I've mentioned a number of times the parking aspect of this project. On the 17th Avenue site, far less an issue because we've got a lot of land. But downtown here, it's something that we have to talk and think about. Slide 23 inventories the spaces that you have right now. There are roughly 300 spaces. We are going to lose some due to the Europeanizing of Wisconsin Rapids, the roundabout. Isn't that what it is?
Yes, yes, it is.
Parlez-vous français? We will be, I guess, I don't know. We eat brie instead of cheddar. Come on, it's Tuesday. Okay, slide 24. Thanks to some marvelous staff here in your building, we've been able to inventory who comes to this building and in large numbers. When I get to slide 25, it'll be a summary, so I don't want you to hurt your eyes trying to read this that we have here. But you've got all the departments on the left. The staff, both current and future, is blue. And then the public, we took every day of the week, morning and afternoon, both current and future. We're trying to get a projection as to how many people potentially, in worst case scenario, would be wherever. And we've got some interesting numbers at the bottom. Let me go then to the next slide, which summarizes it. And so, staff's on the top, public is next, the green. You've got current and future, 20-year projection. I go to the grand total, the first black line, which is right here. That's a lot of people. And it's never going to happen. But it's, it's kind of like, as they say, do you plan a parking lot for Easter? Well, perhaps not, unless you're out in the rural or you have such a marvelous church that every Sunday's Easter. It's not the church that I go to, I'm sorry, I wish it were. So you have these numbers, 734, 777. This is an order of magnitude. And it's a best case estimate that your staff have made, both with respect to the staff who come and work, as well as the public. And so we've factored in things like jury voir dire, or where your main jury selection. If you look really hard, there's one place there's 75 people that might be in this building on a morning going through jury selection, so on and so forth. The important question is the question on the bottom, which is the reality question, is how many cars do we really need? I've been here a number of times and I've listened to staff and the committee say, we've got a parking issue, but for the most part, everybody likes to park to the south, and I've seen that the parking lot to the north is half full maybe most of the time. I don't think I'm not sure I've ever been there when it's really full. We've got a street that separates us, and we've got issues there, and I don't know if the roundabout's going to help that at all. We've got issues of finding the entrance and having, the entrance to the building is here, it's not there or not there. So, it's not a happy parking lot to be using. But I don't think that right now, at least, that I've heard that parking is a serious, serious issue downtown. When you bring human services downtown, there will be a need for more parking, because you've got not only the staff that will be coming from the other locations, but then you have all of the public that interfaces with the human services department as well. So parking is going to be a consideration when that happens. I think that, as I mentioned, there's a greater concern for parking in the option where everybody is downtown, but I think that's the beginning of a dialogue with the city about how to meet those parking needs. And I certainly wouldn't use parking as a reason not to continue a strong conversation about the benefits of being downtown for everyone. So that pretty much summarizes all the things, the big issues that we've been talking about in the study. I go to slide 26. You saw this last time, where we talked about the health department options, either staying at Riverview or potentially co-locating with human services. And as we're saying in previous slides, we are providing a placeholder in this concept for human services. I go then to the next slide, 27. Our recommendation is to stay at Riverview. We've done some number crunching. I think I was quoted 2 months ago as saying that this was a sweetheart deal. I don't know if I said that or not. I guess what I would say today, it's a very favorable rental rate. The calculations that we have put together suggest that over the next 15 years, it's about a $2 million price tag in rent at Riverview. There is an inflation increase, but one of the wonderful things about Riverview is that the utilities and all the housekeeping costs, all the other incidental costs are wrapped up into that rental rate. You actually have 2 different rates for portions of the space that you've got. You probably know that lease better than I do. To take the same department space and bring it into a remodeled building, as we've been talking about here, which includes debt service. I tried to make an apples-to-apples comparison. So it was a pretty conservative rental rate, but a short loan term of 15 years. Plus the cost for utilities and housekeeping. We're suggesting that it could be as much as $4 million, so maybe even twice what Riverview is. So congratulations, it was a great lease arrangement that you garnered. I understand the timing was excellent. Is that true?
Depends on who you talk to.
Okay. I mean, there are lots of reasons and benefits for health to remain at Riverview. What we've looked at here is simply the dollars and cents aspect of it, with a consideration for future planning. Slide 28, I'm going to try to move through this faster. We talked about infrastructure issues. You know of the elevator situation, the toilets. You know better than I do the problems with the mechanical systems, et cetera, in the building. And our engineers have, I think, made 2 trips here. I'm going to go to slide 29. And quite simply, the priorities, and we've worked at establishing priority 1s and priority 2s. Up at Norwood, we encourage the county to talk with the various code officials and the city of Marshfield to identify whether there are any fire alarm system upgrades that need to happen with that building and its change in use. In the courthouse, we talked earlier about the fact that there's been a lot of deferred maintenance with regards to not just trying to fixing the little problems is one thing. Addressing the source of the problems, as you know, is something that's been deferred for a long time. We believe that in the next 5 years, there are a number of things here that I've labeled as priority 1, and I'll put a price tag of roughly $1.3 million to that with regards to the mechanical systems, transformers, etc. I think in our discussions yesterday in the committee, I think Terry would like to see us move some of the antiquated piping problems that he has out of priority 2 into priority 1. I'm not sure what the dollar value of that would be, but I think we want, before we're done, to give some consideration to his concern and move some of those dollars up. We then identified a variety of other issues in the building. We put a price tag of $3.5 million. Much of that work we would see be done as part of a major remodeling of the building. You know, why go in and make some electrical upgrades and other kinds of things if 5 or 6 years later you're going to rip it all out because you've implemented more of the master plan. So I think there's more discussion that needs to happen there. Finally, slide 30 talks about the building to the property, the annex building to the west. I think we talked about this a little bit last time. I mean, you could tear it down, build a new building. In my mind, the footprint is so small, and you're kind of pulling the county government apart when we're trying to bring it together. You could tear the building down, maybe 20 spaces of parking would be provided to you. Maybe it's to sell the building and the property and take your assets and invest them in a larger project. And I understand from discussions yesterday that there are actually there's dialogue going on with the city with regards to that whole block and a half or 2 blocks. So I think some of what we have on slide 30 may be historical at this point, perhaps. So I don't know how long that took, but questions and answers, please.
There's probably more, about 8 or 9 of us, I think, sat through the presentation yesterday also, so some of us probably don't have as many questions as maybe some of the others do, but this certainly, as I stated yesterday, starts the discussion. Supervisor Nelson.
Thank you. I think the one major consideration that has to be taken place is the fact that the 17th Street property is wetlands. And there's been some discussions in another committee about the disposition of that property. And with that whole section there is basically wetlands. It probably isn't an ideal spot to build.
I'm going to go back to that one slide. Thank you for your comment. From the information that we have received, perhaps the only buildable area on the lot is the area that we placed the building. And it's roughly, I'll try to outline it. It's this area right here. Much, if not all, of this is, at least on the documents that have been provided to us, are wetlands, yes. We've made this comment in the committee that if you were to continue to pursue this as a viable option, that you might well want to consider acquiring that piece of property. So you really then have a much larger area to work with if you were to continue to go down that path. But you're right, there's a lot of wetlands on that property.
Supervisor Wagner.
Sir, on your future justice needs, both downtown options B and C show the construction of a 300-bed jail on the campus itself. Is what it is. And the question is, are they assuming the same remodeling of the existing jail that you showed on the other options and later on here? And I guess the biggest question for me is it more expensive to remodel the existing jail than it is to remodel, say, the type of space we have on the first, second, and third floor of the existing building?
So the question is, take an old jail or take an office building and remodel it into office space. Is that the question?
Yeah, well, it's that even if we do remodel it in the plan you were shown, a good portion of the jail would remain just open space in the other place we were showing.
Well,
and I guess that
what slide are you looking at?
Okay, I was looking at let's go with 19 as one, and then the other one I didn't dog ear that page.
Yeah.
Sorry, but.
Well, let's look at. There's several good questions in what you're talking about. Let's go to slide 22.
Oh, and yeah, 22 was the other one.
Yeah, it might be the best discussion.
Right. Yes, that's the one that's got me confused.
The jail, which I'll outline again. Find the slide, John. There we are.
There it is.
Here's the outline.
Yeah, that's remodeling. Yeah, I guess the biggest question is that the same remodeling scheme that you would be showing for this building?
Yes.
If the 300, right, okay.
Yeah, right.
And is it more expensive to remodel that jail than
First question. What you see on this plan applies to both 17th Avenue and the downtown options. So that's one question. I think the other one has to do with the cost of remodeling these areas.
Right.
Ask your question differently, some other way. Let me help to understand what you're...
Okay.
It's an order of magnitude question, I think.
I think it is, because a jail is a very specialized construction as it exists now.
Right.
And I'm sure there's reinforcement and heavy-duty steel infrastructure in there that wouldn't be found in a normal building. Is it going to cost more to renovate that space for office space than it would be anywhere else.
Perhaps so. Being very specific. The existing jail, let me talk about that for a minute. There are actually two buildings there. There's the old jail, and then there's the new old jail. The old jail is right here. The new old jail is here, and then all of that. Okay. We've done this on several projects. Eau Claire's the most recent, where we took the old linear jail and went in, and they take a little bobcat up there, and they just tear everything down. So it's reinforced walls, et cetera, and things like that. So there's additional demolition costs associated with that. Then if you're coming in, God, I hate to see these courtrooms being torn apart. To take down some of these stud wall partitions and things like that. But clearly there's a difference in cost in that regard. The question is, well, it's not a question, it's an issue. In remodeling the jail, it will be a complete gut. We will take it down to the floor and the walls. Now we have to think about what's going to happen with the windows on the outside. That's a concern. They're up high, they're not very big. Do we tear those out and actually make better windows? I think we would want to do that. But we're putting in not only all new walls and floors and finishes and ceilings, but we're going to put in all new electrical, all new plumbing, new bath. We have to put bathrooms in for the health department or the clinic. It's a complete cut.
And that of course begs the question: would it be easier to take that whole thing down to ground and rebuild?
Yes. God, you read my mind. Well, that's a conversation. I mean, that's an important consideration. And one of the things that we comment on with the existing jail is, first of all, its shape. It's really awkward. I mean, you try to think about taking that and turning it into some offices or something else. I mean, there's some creativity involved that would be required. These are perhaps bearing walls that run down the corridor, so it's going to be tough to move those. We'd have to punch holes in them. Would we consider, if you were to move forward with this, I think you would ask us, let's evaluate the cost benefit. If we're going to build something there, the idea of tearing it down and building a brand new building versus trying to remodel it. That's the question. That's the question, yes. And so for our purposes today, we're simply saying, it's an existing building. We've done this before. We did this up in Rhinelander or Oneida County. It worked out very well. Took the old jail attached to the courthouse, built a new law enforcement center, went back in, gutted the old jail, and now it's general government. We just did it recently in Eau Claire County as well. It's reuse of existing buildings, and it makes sense and it can work. A little bit here, the challenge is it's just an awkwardly shaped building. The other thing is, and we're not looking to add more space, because as you can see on the slide, we've got a lot of blue left over. If you were going to build another building, you would probably give some thought to building the foundation such that you could add a floor up above, which you can't do in this building now as well. I mean, these are really good questions, and now we're kind of into the details of the discussion, and you can see that easily. It's not that you're accepting an idea here in its absolute form. We're talking about big conversation pictures. One is to identify and recognize the need. Is there in fact a need that we need to begin that discussion? And we need to talk about how do we solve that need and where do we solve it? And as one of the gentlemen mentioned, there are some issues related to the 17th Avenue site. We also know that there's some history to that site. You came very close to actually building a new jail and sheriff's department there a few years ago, which might not have been a bad decision. I mean, I'm not here to say that that wouldn't have worked. When at the same time, and we've done, this is the work that we do. One of the other supervisors asked me that as well. I mean, our work throughout the Midwest is to plan and design government facilities. Many of them are jails and courthouses and sheriff's departments. So even though we started the study really talking about general government and human services and things like that, which we have a lot of experience with, the day-to-day work that we do is really in this conversation that we're having right now. Any other questions?
Got one behind you, just a second. Supervisor Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm going to go to the other end of the county for just a second, if I could. And one of the reasons we talked about space needs, I think what really kind of started this ball down the road was our lease was coming up with the city of Marshfield for City Hall. And did it pay, or was there enough room to move those operations out of Marshfield City Hall into our campus up on the north end, Norwood? What I'm hearing is there is not enough room to move the entire operation of human services up into that campus, that we would have to build roughly $2.5 million building. Then that begs the question, we did the numbers for the health department, that begs the question, what can we expect out of a lease from the city of Marshfield? Does it pay to stick $2-some million into a new building if we can receive favorable rates from the city of Marshfield for continual leasing of the City Hall area? I just can't see spending that kind of money. There's still a lot of room in the Norwood campus, I think, and City Hall isn't the only operation we have up there. We still have the Cornerstone Ceramics. I think it's called Cornerstone, if I'm not mistaken. Cornerstone.
No more ceramics.
No more ceramics, just the Cornerstone. I think there's opportunities there to consolidate some of that up into one campus. I think we certainly have enough room there. But as far as sticking $2-some million into a building, if we can lease something from the city until the city of Marshfield hands us our walking papers and shows us the door, that may be our best option.
I think that lends itself to the question Trent just asked. It's the project approach, the big picture. You have to start somewhere. A lack of a plan is not a good idea. So wherever we go and that discussion takes us, I think is beneficial going forward. I don't know if I have a supervisor question. I do have a member from the public here. Normally during these meetings, we don't, after public comment, allow that. Without objection, does anybody have an objection to Mr. Stelmach? We'll give you a minute, Jim, if you want, to ask a question or ask a question.
Very quick.
Sure.
I did drop my envelope in the mailbox this morning, so I could get 2 minutes maybe. Could you share with us who the members are of the Space Needs Committee? And number 2, relative to Riverview and what we've read the last few years and what goes on business-wise between there and here, I believe there was grant money used, federal grant money used for that opportunity at Riverview. Will that continue? Thank you.
We'll address those. I don't believe there's any federal grant money used there. Sue, is that correct?
That's correct.
That is correct. No federal grant money used. Donna, will you identify the members of the committee?
Yes. I would be glad to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't know that I'm on.
We're having a hard time. I know all the microphones in the front row are not working.
Okay, well,
Wrap that one.
yeah, okay.
There you go.
That's what I do to start IVs. People tell me how to do that. Let me slap your arm to start your IV. I will, and I'll ask those people to stand so that you can put a face to a name. Peter Hendler is on the Space Needs Committee, as is Mr. Murphy, Gary Allwarden, and Al Bry.
I changed.
Oh, Mr. I called you. I've been doing that since you got on the board. I've been calling you Mr. Murphy, Mr. Curry. I apologize.
Better looking than I am anyway.
Yeah. So 5 members of which I chair, and I'm privileged to do so.
So you have Handler, Curry, Allwarden, Bride, and Rosen.
Thank you. Thank you. And I was referring to the 2.3 mil grant, how it was used. Not sure.
That was an obesity grant. Thank you very much. All right, any other questions from the supervisor at this point? This starts the discussion. Now we go down that road, where do we have the next, not just 2 years, 5 years, but 30 years. And I'll tell you what, 30 years comes a lot quicker than you think it's going to, because I remember sitting up here thinking 2 years is a long time. So, Supervisor Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I can speak without a microphone. The answer,
It doesn't go into the
we've got a
TV.
lot of, being on the committee, we've got a lot of things we've learned along the way, and
to talk to Mr. Meyer, Supervisor Minor's talk about Norwood. We found out there's going to be space up there. The problem with Norwood is the unique size of the building, or the shape of the building. The other problem we have with Norwood is its code requirements for the health facility, and that's the reason that Venture is separated that building. If we tie it together, we have to meet the code requirements of the health facility. When it's separate, we wouldn't. So there's Chairman Flemel is right. There's a lot of details that are going to have to be talked about here, but
Yeah, as with everything, we'll look at the cost, benefit analysis as we go forward. Is there anything else to come before, any questions here, anything to come before this board before we adjourn this meeting? I got a couple of things here, I guess. Supervisor Clendenning?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, of course, I'm still a little upset that the supervisor voted no on that. So we might just well take out the rule that when you vote no, you have to say why. I think it's personal. Ms. Rosar voting against that. I think her constituency has to know why. Actually, the issue of changing the court date, Martin Luther King Day.
Is that
We'll take that under advisement. Supervisor Clendenning, that is... Yeah, I think it's only on committees that you have to justify a vote, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm getting a yes from our corp counsel back there, saying that is the case. But we'll certainly check on that, and obviously county board rules are always subject to change. But I think that's only committees. I'm getting an affirmative from the vice chairman up here, and the corp counsel is also shaking his head yes. While they're looking up that,
I just had a couple of things. As I said before, please sign your oath of office, leave it on your desks, and I will pick them up after you're done. I put on your desk an updated copy of the county board rules. Please replace those in your 3-ring binders that you have. I 3-hole punched them for you, so you have those. In the memo that I sent you in your packet this week, I asked what email address you would like associated with you. Email me your choices. Those of you that previously didn't have an email, in our iPad discussion today, you're going to get your new county email. Some of you would prefer maybe to not have to check multiple email addresses. So maybe you'd like your personal email associated with you as a county board supervisor. I need to know your preferences. Email me, let me know what you would like. That will be associated with you on your website so that people coming to our website can contact you that way. That's what I would put in the county directory for you on your business cards, and how I would communicate with you when I have things to send to you. So think about that and let me know your preferences.
okay, let me go back to the first question asked. Peter, did you have a hard answer to that one yet? No? All right, we will take that under advisement. We will look at that. I don't think we have anything else to come before the board other than we're going to, as soon as we adjourn, we'll take about a 10-minute break or so to get organized to let Amy get set up here from systems. iPads will be distributed, and we will start the training process. So at this point in time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn by Hinkle, second by Al Ward. Any discussion on that? All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.